I'm Claire, I'm 35, and for most of my life, they told me I was too sensitive until I believed it and stopped feeling altogether. Right now, I'm sitting in a therapist's office that smells faintly like lavender and printer ink, staring at a fake ficus plant in the corner while Dr. Jenna asks me how I've been sleeping. I lie and say, okay, even though I was awake until 3 a.m. scrolling through old texts and feeling absolutely nothing. No tears. No anger. Just this dull, foggy ache I can't shake. She nods and scribbles something in her notebook. I wonder if she can tell that I'm lying. Maybe she knows I always say, okay, even when everything in me feels like it's caving in. I don't know how to answer honestly anymore. I've spent most of my life pretending everything is fine because being too sensitive always got me into trouble. Claire, you're taking things too personally. You need to toughen up. It's just a joke, don't be so dramatic. Those were the soundtracks of my childhood, my teens, and most of my 20s. They came from the people who were supposed to love me. My parents. My sister. Friends. Teachers. Even strangers sometimes, when I let my guard down. I used to cry easily. At songs. At commercials. At books with bittersweet endings. When someone gave me a compliment, I'd beam and blush, and then overanalyze it for days. I felt everything deeply: joy, pain, fear, love, and for a long time, I thought that made me whole. But the world doesn't like people like me. Sensitive people make things messy. We see too much, say too much, ask for too much. So I stopped. I stopped crying. Stopped asking. Stopped reacting. I became the low-maintenance friend, the calm coworker, the unbothered girlfriend. And for a while, that worked. People liked me more. I was easier to be around. Predictable. Polished. Controlled. But I felt like I was dying inside. It's not like there was one big moment that broke me. It was thousands of small ones. Tiny paper cuts that healed wrong and left invisible scars. Like the time I brought my mom a handmade card when I was 7, and she said, "Can you go do something quietly? Mommy has a headache." Or when my best friend in high school told me I was too intense after I cried when she forgot my birthday. Those moments pile up. They teach you that your love is too much. Your feelings are inconvenient. That if you want to be included, you need to shrink. So I shrink. I remember being 15 and standing outside the bathroom at a sleepover while the other girls laughed about me in whispers. Claire always makes things weird. She takes everything so seriously. I stood there frozen, my hand on the doorknob, heart hammering so loud I couldn't breathe. And then I walked in and smiled like I hadn't heard a thing. It was easier to pretend than to be the one who cried again. Erin, my older sister, used to tell me, "God, Claire, you're exhausting. Can't you ever just let stuff go?" She was the golden child. The one who got the joke. Who laughed things off. Who charmed our parents and teachers and boyfriends and never got caught crying in the school bathroom. I envied her. I wanted to be like her. But I wasn't. And she knew it. She teased me constantly. Sometimes it was playful. Sometimes it cut deep. I never told her how often I went to bed feeling ashamed for who I was. She probably would have rolled her eyes if I had. "You're too sensitive," it was always my flaw. The explanation for every rejection, every fight, every time I felt like I was on the outside looking in. College was supposed to be my fresh start. I left home with a suitcase full of thrifted clothes, my favorite books, and the quiet hope that maybe, finally, I'd find people who got me. People who didn't think tears were embarrassing or that vulnerability was weakness. And for a while, I did. I joined the campus poetry club. I stayed up all night having deep, emotional conversations with strangers who quickly became soulmates. I fell in love with a woman named Jules, sweet, soft-spoken, with green eyes that made me feel safe for the first time in my life. Jules told me I had a beautiful heart, that I made the world feel deeper, that I reminded her of rainstorms and wildflowers. And I believed her, for a while, until I brought her home for Thanksgiving. My mother barely looked at her. My father didn't say much of anything. And Erin, well, she laughed and said, "Wow, Claire, you're really going through a phase, huh," in front of everyone. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. Jules squeezed my hand under the table. I didn't squeeze back. After that trip, things changed. Jules said I was pulling away, that I seemed distant, that I didn't talk about my feelings the way I used to. But how could I? I'd spent 20 years being told my feelings were wrong. Too big. Too much. I didn't know how to share them anymore. She left me 6 months later. Said she felt like she was loving a ghost. I didn't cry. I went to work the next day, filed reports, answered emails, smiled through meetings. Everyone told me I was so composed, so professional, so strong. I started getting panic attacks around 32. At first, I thought they were heart problems. The chest tightness, the dizziness, the way my hands would go numb. I ended up in the ER twice before a doctor asked if I'd ever seen a therapist. I laughed and said, "No, I'm fine. I just don't handle stress well." But that night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark with my arms wrapped around my knees and thought, maybe I'm not fine. Maybe I haven't been fine in years. So I Googled therapists the next morning and made the appointment. That was 7 weeks ago. Now here I am, still staring at that ficus plant. Still wondering if I'm making any progress. Still struggling to feel anything other than numb. Dr. Jenna tells me I need to unlearn the lies I've been told. That sensitivity isn't a weakness, it's a gift. That I don't need to armor up just to exist in this world. But part of me is still afraid. What if I open up again and get laughed at? What if I cry and no one cares? What if the real me is too much to love? Still, something is shifting. Last night, I stood on my balcony in my oversized hoodie, barefoot, while it rained. I didn't have music on. I didn't take pictures. I just stood there, letting the rain soak through my hair and drip down my spine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something. I think it was sadness. Or maybe peace. Or maybe just the fact that I could feel anything at all was the victory. I didn't push the feeling away. I didn't shame myself for it. I just let it be. And maybe, just maybe, that's where healing begins. It's strange, looking back, how easily the worst stories hide themselves inside the best memories. When people ask what my childhood was like, I usually say fine. Middle class. Suburban. Stable. I tell them about the white house with blue shutters, the oak tree in the front yard, how I used to climb it barefoot even though Mom hated when I scuffed my jeans. I tell them about Christmas mornings, summer BBQs, family movie nights. I don't tell them how many times I cried myself to sleep in that house. Or how often I'd sit in my closet, hugging my knees, just to feel quiet and invisible for a while. I learned early that feelings made people uncomfortable. Especially mine. I was 5 the first time someone called me sensitive. I had scraped my knee falling off my bike and was sobbing in the driveway. My dad rushed over, not to comfort me, but to hush me. "Come on, Claire, stop crying. You're not dying. Don't make a scene." He didn't sound angry, just embarrassed. Like my pain was somehow an inconvenience to everyone else. I remember biting the inside of my cheek to stop crying. I remember nodding even though it still hurt. I remember that was the day I learned it was safer to bleed quietly. My mom was more polished about it. She didn't like outbursts. If I got upset over something at school, she'd say, "Claire, sweetheart, you really need to let these little things roll off your back." If I cried because Erin made fun of me at the dinner table, she'd tell me I was too sensitive and needed thicker skin. "Life's tough, honey," she'd say, cutting into her chicken. "Better toughen up." And Erin, well, Erin knew exactly how to press every nerve and act like she didn't. She was 2 years older, blonder, louder, funnier. The center of every room. If I was a flickering candle, she was a bonfire. Everyone adored her. Especially my parents. She made straight B's, and they celebrated with dinner at her favorite sushi place. I made straight A's and got a polite nod and a "good job, keep it up." She broke curfew and got a gentle "we're worried." I accidentally missed one chore and got a lecture about responsibility. If she teased me and I got upset, I was overreacting. If I snapped back, I was dramatic. And I believed them. For years, I honestly thought something was wrong with me. That my feelings were defective. That I was fundamentally weaker than everyone else around me. I carried that belief into school, into friendships, into relationships. I remember 2nd grade, my first, best friend, Nicole. She once told me she didn't want to sit next to me at lunch anymore because I cried too much. We were 8. And I still think about it. Middle school made it worse. I was the girl who cried in class when we read of mice and men. The one who wrote poems on the back of math homework. The one who felt everything too hard and too fast. That's what my 7th grade teacher, Mr. Harper, wrote in a parent email. Claire is bright, but emotional. She feels things very intensely. I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a warning. At 13, Aaron found one of my notebooks and read my poems out loud during a sleepover. I had written something about feeling invisible, about wishing I could be someone else. She read it in a mocking tone while her friends laughed and tried not to meet my eyes. I sat outside in the backyard until everyone left. She said later it was just a joke. Don't be so sensitive. But something in me cracked that night. I started pulling back. I stopped writing for fun. I smiled more. Nodded more. I started collecting versions of myself that I thought people could tolerate. Happy Claire. Chill Claire. Funny when it's safe Claire. I became fluent in emotional small talk. By high school, I had it down to a science. Teachers loved me. Friends trusted me. I was the reliable one, the shoulder to cry on, the peacemaker. I played the role so well that sometimes I almost believed it myself. But behind it, I was lonely, exhausted, starving for connection I didn't know how to ask for. I tried once, my junior year. I told my mom I thought I might be depressed, that I felt empty a lot, that sometimes I'd sit in the shower just to cry where no one could hear. She froze, then forced a smile. You're just overwhelmed, sweetheart. School is stressful. You're probably tired. And that was it. No follow-up. No check-ins. Just a redirect and a suggestion that I try yoga. So I stopped trying to open up. I started dating around that time, mostly boys who liked how quiet I was. How low drama. How I never got upset when they forgot to text back or flirted with other girls at parties. One of them even told me, "You're the kind of girl I can bring around my friends without worrying." I took it as a compliment. I shouldn't have. I didn't figure out I liked women until college, and even then, it scared me. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew what kind of vulnerability came with loving someone deeply. What it meant to open myself up to being seen. And I didn't know if I could handle that. But then I met Jules, and everything changed. She was warm, soft-spoken, a little bit nerdy. She liked old books and thunderstorms and music that made her cry. The first time she held my hand, I thought, maybe it's safe now. We dated for almost 2 years. And for most of that time, I felt more alive than I ever had. But I kept holding pieces of myself back. I didn't know how not to. If I got overwhelmed, I'd go quiet instead of explaining. If I was hurt, I'd say, "It's fine," and retreat into my own head. Jules called it emotional disappearing. She was right. One night, I saw her packing up her books and journals, and I knew it was over before she said a word. "I love you," she said quietly. "But I don't think you trust me with your heart. And I don't know how to love someone who won't let me all the way in." It hurt like hell. But I didn't cry until 3 days later. I told everyone we broke up because of timing. The truth was, I didn't know how to let someone love the real me, the full, soft, messy, emotional version. The one who cries at the end of ET, who overthinks texts, who keeps journals full of unspoken grief. I was too afraid that if I showed that side, they'd say it again. "You're too sensitive." It's incredible how powerful those words can be, especially when they come from the people you love. They taught me to bury myself before anyone else could. To keep my real feelings locked in the attic of my mind, like something shameful and dangerous. But you can only keep parts of yourself hidden for so long before they start to rot. Before the numbness becomes unbearable. Before the quiet becomes too loud. That's what brought me to Dr. Jenna. Not a breakdown. Not a dramatic spiral. Just the realization that I couldn't feel much of anything anymore. That joy felt out of reach and sadness felt like a distant memory. That I had armored up for so long, I forgot what it felt like to live without the armor. Now I'm trying to take it off piece by piece. Even if it hurts. Even if it scares me. Even if the people who raised me never understand. The first real fracture happened on my 32nd birthday. It should have been a good day, Jules was long gone, but I had a new apartment, a decent job in marketing, and I'd just gotten promoted. I decided to host a small dinner at my place. Nothing fancy, just a few friends, wine, and Aaron. I was proud of the way I decorated, the way I cooked everything myself. For once, I wanted to feel like I mattered. I invited 6 people. Erin showed up 40 minutes late. She walked in laughing, holding her phone, mid-conversation with someone she didn't even introduce. She hugged me like she was being filmed, all exaggerated and loud, then made a beeline for the wine without even acknowledging the meal I'd spent all day cooking. "Claire, babe," she said with a smirk, holding up a slightly burned lasagna corner, still trying to master basic domestic skills, huh? Everyone laughed. So I did too. But my stomach flipped. The thing about people like Erin is that they know how to make you feel small in front of others without saying anything overtly cruel. She didn't call me a failure. She didn't say I was pathetic for trying so hard. But her tone, the tilt of her head, the sarcastic smile, did all the work. And I let it slide. Just like I always did. Halfway through dinner, I brought out a homemade lemon cake. It was something Mom used to make when I was little, back when she still baked. I found the recipe in a box of old books and wanted to recreate it. It was warm, tangy, soft inside with just the right amount of tart. As I lit the candles, Erin turned to the others and said, "Claire's such a try-hard sometimes, isn't she? Always going above and beyond for no reason. It's kinda cute." Someone giggled. My face flushed. I was about to say something. I swear I was. But then she added, "You've always been sensitive to stuff like this. Don't take it so seriously." And just like that, she stole the air out of the room. No one defended me. Not even Julia, my coworker, who had known me for years. She just looked down at her plate like she didn't want to get involved. I blew out the candles. Everyone clapped. Someone took a selfie. Erin kissed me on the cheek and said, "Love you, sis. Don't ever change." But I was already disappearing inside myself. That night, after they all left, I sat on the floor of my living room and cried with the lights off. Not because of the joke, but because I had made peace with being invisible in front of the people I cared about. It was a slow realization that I kept inviting people into my life who only liked the filtered version of me. The Claire who smiled when she was hurt, who gave more than she got, who said it's fine even when it wasn't. And the next betrayal didn't come from Erin. It came from work. My manager, Ryan, was the kind of guy who wore expensive sneakers with dress shirts and called everyone boss. He loved my ideas, especially when he could present them as his own. He called me his secret weapon in meetings. I used to think that meant he respected me. Until the Johnson pitch. I'd worked 3 weekends straight on that campaign, custom graphics, brand language, client research, the works. Ryan barely looked at the materials. Just said, "Nice job, Claire, I'll walk it through with them next week." And then he presented it to the clients without mentioning my name once. I found out because the intern, Mallory, texted me during the meeting. "They're eating it up. Ryan's acting like he wrote the whole deck." I laughed, then stared at the screen for a long time. When I confronted him later, Ryan said, "You're taking this too personally. It's not about credit, Claire, it's about winning." I stood there in his glass-walled office, my throat tightening. He added, "You're a bit sensitive, you know that? This is the kind of behavior that can come off poorly." Like that, he turned my boundaries into a liability. I didn't say another word. I walked out, went back to my desk, and stared at my screensaver for 10 full minutes while trying not to cry in public. It wasn't the first time something like that had happened, but it was the first time I let myself feel the full weight of it. The way I'd been told over and over again that my reactions were the problem. That I was the problem. Sensitive people get ignored. Emotional women get labeled. I remembered Dr. Jenna saying, "You don't have to prove your feelings to anyone. They're real because you feel them." But the world didn't see it that way. Especially not men like Ryan. Or women like Erin. Or the family I still couldn't figure out how to stop needing. And then came Mom's birthday. She turned 60. Erin planned a surprise party. I offered to help. Erin said no, she had it under control. I showed up with flowers, a handwritten letter, and a framed photograph from Mom's wedding day, one I had restored and reprinted. She cried when she opened it. hugged me, told me I was too thoughtful for my own good. Erin gave her a spa voucher and a necklace. Later that night, I overheard Erin telling her husband, Claire always does the most. She needs everyone to think she's special. Her husband shrugged and said, that's her whole thing, right? Sweet and fragile. Sweet and fragile. I felt sick. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay in bed playing the words over in my head like a song I hated but couldn't turn off. By the next morning, I had made a decision. I emailed HR and reported Ryan's pattern of credit stealing. It took everything in me to hit send. I was shaking when I did. He denied everything. Mallory backed me up. But the company said it was inconclusive and unfortunate. They moved me to a different team without asking, as if I was the one causing trouble. I felt like I was losing everything. My trust in people. My faith in myself. The idea that being good and honest and kind would protect me. It didn't. And that's when something cracked open in me. It was a Sunday morning. I was folding laundry. Something dumb came on TV, a pet adoption commercial with sad dogs and soft piano music. And for the first time in weeks, I sobbed. Not silent tears. Not polite ones. Full body sobs. Ugly, shaking, gut-wrenching sobs. Like all the feelings I'd buried for years finally clawed their way to the surface. I dropped to the floor, still holding a t-shirt, and cried until my chest hurt. And you know what? It didn't kill me. It didn't destroy me. It was the first thing in months that made me feel real. After that day, I started writing again. Not for anyone else, just for me. I bought a new journal and filled 5 pages in one sitting. Angry words. Sad ones. Truthful ones. Things I'd never said out loud. Things I hadn't even admitted to Dr. Jenna yet. Like this. I'm not too sensitive. I've just been living in a world that punishes softness. And I'm done letting it win. There's a specific kind of silence that comes after your whole identity collapses. It's not peaceful. It's not dramatic. It's just hollow. That's where I lived for a while. I stopped answering group texts. Stopped going to happy hours. Erin called twice and I let it go to voicemail both times. My mom sent me a just checking in email that I left unread for a week. I didn't even open Instagram. I didn't want to see anyone's curated life, especially not Erin's smiling face, sipping wine, captioned with family first 2 hearts. Family first. What a joke. The day I hit rock bottom wasn't loud. It didn't involve a fight or a breakdown. It was a Tuesday. I walked into my new team's office and sat at my desk, looked at the spreadsheet I was supposed to update, and just couldn't. I stared at it for 45 minutes. Then I shut my laptop, picked up my purse, and walked out. No one noticed. I went home, sat on my couch, and tried to remember the last time I felt like a whole person. Like I mattered. I couldn't. Instead, I thought about Erin's face at my birthday dinner. The smirk. The cute little try-hard line. The way she made me feel like a child pretending to be a grown-up. I thought about Ryan's condescension, the way he leaned back in his chair and told me not to take things so personally, as if the erasure of my work was just business. I thought about my mother, who always found a way to make me feel like my emotions were a problem to be solved, who taught me to smile when I was hurting, to fold my pain into polite sentences. And I thought about how exhausted I was. Not just tired, soul tired. Done. Done with swallowing my voice. Done with playing nice. Done with pretending their words didn't bruise. I didn't know what I wanted exactly. But I knew this. I couldn't keep living like this. Smiling through humiliation. Disappearing every time someone rolled their eyes. Laughing at jokes that hurt. Apologizing for being human. That night, I opened a blank Word document and wrote a letter to myself. Not a journal entry. Not a pity party. A declaration. Dear Claire, you are not broken. You were just told too many times that you were hard to love. And you believed it. But that ends now. I printed it. Taped it to my bathroom mirror. Read it every morning. And that's when something began to shift quietly but powerfully. I started to talk back to the voice in my head. The one that said, you're overreacting every time I felt something deeply. The one that said, don't make this awkward when someone crossed a boundary. The one that said, you should be grateful they included you at all. I started to say, no, actually. I'm not overreacting. I'm reacting appropriately to being disrespected. It felt weird at first, like trying on shoes a size too big. But each time I spoke up, even if it was just in my mind, I felt more like myself again. I made an appointment with Dr. Jenna and told her everything I'd been holding in. The betrayal at work, the birthday humiliation, Erin's constant belittling, my parents' chronic dismissal of my feelings. She didn't tell me I was overthinking it. She said, Claire, what you're describing is emotional neglect. And it's real. And it's valid. And it's not your fault. I cried in her office for 40 minutes. Not because I was sad. Because it was the first time someone named me. Gave me permission to be angry, to grieve, to want more. And for the first time ever, I didn't apologize for crying. I walked out of that session with a fire in my chest. Small, but steady. I didn't know what to do with it at first. It wasn't like I was suddenly fearless. I still second-guessed every decision. I still hesitated before speaking my truth. But something inside me had changed. I no longer wanted to disappear. So I started reclaiming space. It began with little things. I told my new manager I wanted to lead a presentation instead of just contributing slides. She blinked in surprise, then said yes. I prepared for a week and presented it with a voice that only trembled once. People clapped. Not because they had to, but because I'd done something great. Next, I RSVP'd no to Erin's upcoming brunch. No excuse. Just, I won't be attending. Hope it goes well. She replied, everything okay? I stared at her message. Then typed, not really. We can talk if you're open to hearing what I need to say. She didn't reply for 4 days. When she finally did, it was, let's chat this weekend. I agreed, then immediately panicked. What was I doing? Confronting Erin? The sister who made it her full-time job to make me feel like the family pet? What if she laughed? What if she rolled her eyes? But that part of me, the one that wrote the letter, the one that didn't want to disappear anymore, she said, and what if she doesn't? So I showed up. We met at a coffee shop near my apartment. Neutral territory. She walked in wearing oversized sunglasses and fake sincerity. Hey, stranger, she said, hugging me like she always did. Quick. Hollow. We sat. Small talk. Then I said, I want to say something before we fall into old patterns. She raised an eyebrow. I continued. You've hurt me, Erin. A lot. The jokes. The way you talk about me like I'm a walking punchline. You act like I'm too delicate to matter, but you forget I've spent years internalizing that. It's shaped how I see myself. And it's not okay. She blinked. Laughed softly. Claire, come on. You're taking things way too seriously. There it is, I said, cutting her off. The line. You always say that. And I'm done letting it be the end of every conversation. She leaned back. Are you seriously mad about birthday jokes? I'm not mad about one thing, I said, calmly. I'm exhausted by the pattern. I want a relationship with you, Erin. But not like this. Not if I have to choose between honesty and peace. Not if I have to keep making myself small to stay close to you. Her face changed then. She wasn't smirking anymore. She looked confused. Maybe guilty. Maybe just surprised I had a spine. For once, I didn't care what she felt. I didn't leave that coffee shop needing to be understood. I left knowing I'd told the truth. And that was enough. Later that week, my mother called. She wanted to talk about Erin. I stopped her. I'm not doing this, I said. I'm not playing the quiet daughter anymore. You and Dad raised me to be invisible. And it's taken me 3 decades to even notice. She was silent. I'm not angry, I added. I'm just done participating in the version of our family where my feelings are inconvenient. She sighed. You always were the emotional one. I smiled, genuinely. Yeah, Mom. And I'm learning that's a beautiful thing. There's a quiet kind of rage that grows when you start remembering everything they told you to forget. It doesn't look like screaming. It looks like a woman walking through the world with her head up for the first time. That woman was me. And I had a plan now. Not a dramatic one. Not revenge, not war. Just a plan to take my power back, one small truth at a time. The coffee shop conversation with Erin stayed with me. Not because she apologized. She didn't. Not because she changed. She hasn't. But because I didn't back down. I didn't shrink. I didn't say, never mind, even when her face twisted with that familiar disbelief. That moment gave me something I hadn't felt in years: agency. And once I got a taste of it, I couldn't stop. I started with work. I scheduled a meeting with HR, not just to rehash what happened with Ryan, but to submit a written record. I brought printed emails, timestamped files, calendar entries, and screenshots. I kept my tone calm, direct, professional. No shaking hands. No, I hope this isn't a problem. I said, this happened. This matters. I need it documented. They were startled. They tried to reassure me with soft corporate talk. We're so sorry this experience left you feeling unseen. I interrupted. It didn't leave me feeling unseen. I was unseen. Let's not soften the truth. They blinked, nodded, took notes. The next week, I got reassigned again, this time by request. I was put on a higher profile project, one that let me work more independently. No middlemen. Just me and the work. It wasn't justice, but it was power. My own. Then came the letter. Not the one taped to my mirror, a new one. This one was for my parents. I didn't send it yet, but I wrote it. Every word. Every piece I'd swallowed over the years. I wrote about how being labeled sensitive became a cage. How I learned to stay quiet because I was tired of being told I was too much. How they raised me to believe love meant suppressing myself for the comfort of others. I didn't hold back. I didn't tidy it up at the end with a neat, but I love you anyway. Not because I didn't love them, but because love without truth isn't love. It's performance. I folded the letter, put it in an envelope, and left it on my desk for a week. Every time I saw it, I stood up straighter. That was enough for now. And then, Aaron posted something on Instagram that made my blood go cold. A quote graphic. Some people are just too emotional to handle life. Be strong instead. Captioned with, learning to love the strong version of me. No more emotional vampires. Hashtag growth, hashtag boundaries. It didn't take a genius to read between the lines. I almost laughed. If I'd posted something like that, I'd be accused of being dramatic. But when Aaron does it, it's inspiring. I didn't respond. Instead, I unfollowed her. Not just on Instagram. In real life. I stopped chasing her approval. Stopped engaging in conversations where I had to defend my basic humanity. Stopped measuring myself by her ability to tolerate me. And in that absence, something wild happened. I started hearing my own voice more clearly. Dr. Jenna noticed it first. You're not censoring yourself as much, she said after our 6th session that month. You speak like you believe yourself now. I smiled. I think I do. One night, around 2 a.m., I couldn't sleep. I got out of bed, made tea, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. Something was buzzing inside me, not anxiety, not sadness. Energy. I opened a blank document and titled it, Too Sensitive. Then I started writing. Not a letter. Not a journal entry. A story. My story. I wrote about the scraped knees. The birthday party. The way Aaron turned everything into a joke with me as the punchline. I wrote about the boys who loved me for being low maintenance. The managers who took my work and gave me scraps. The day I stopped crying. The day I started again. I wrote for 3 hours straight. And when I was done, I didn't close the file. I sent it to an editor friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Just attached the doc and wrote, I don't know if this is anything, but I needed to say it. Do what you want with it. I went to sleep scared out of my mind, but proud. By morning, she had replied, Claire, this is something. Raw, honest, unfiltered. Can I run it in the next issue's personal essay section? We can publish it anonymously if you want. But this is powerful. I cried reading that. Then I replied, use my name. It was the first time in my life I didn't hide who I was in my writing. And when the issue came out print and online, people started reaching out. Not just friends. Strangers. Women from all over. Messaging me. Commenting. Saying, you wrote what I've never been able to say. This is my story too. Thank you for showing me I'm not broken. It was overwhelming. And beautiful. It was also the day Aaron texted me. Wow. So you're airing our dirty laundry now? I didn't think you'd actually stoop that low. My stomach tightened, old habit. But I took a breath, then replied, I told my story. If you saw yourself in it, that's something for you to look at. Not my responsibility to protect your comfort anymore. She never responded. And I didn't need her to. A week later, my mom called. I read it, she said quietly. My pulse quickened. Okay. I didn't realize all of that. That you felt that way. You didn't want to realize, I said. I tried to tell you. Over and over. She exhaled. You're right. And I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed to say it. I sat there stunned. Not because she apologized, but because, for the first time, she didn't tell me I was being too emotional. That mattered. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I sent the second letter. The one for them. No edits. No sugarcoating. Just the truth. I don't know what they'll do with it. I don't need to know. Because this time, it wasn't about them. It was about me, choosing myself, finally, after a lifetime of being told I was too soft for this world. But I wasn't too soft. I was just unprotected. Now I had boundaries. Now I had my voice. Now I had a fire. It's funny how power changes everything, even in small doses. When you're used to shrinking, even standing at your full height feels rebellious. That's what life started to feel like. Rebellious in a quiet, steady way. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't storming out of rooms, I was simply not shrinking anymore. But people notice when you stop making yourself smaller. And not everyone likes it. Especially not Aaron. Especially not my father. Especially not the people who benefited from my silence. At first, I didn't realize how much tension my truth had created. My essay had circulated far more than I expected. Shared online. Quoted. Commented on. It wasn't viral, but it hit home for a lot of women enough that it reached corners of my world I hadn't intended it to touch. Including my family. One afternoon, I got a call from my Aunt Lisa. She's the only one in the family who ever asked how I was really doing. I read your piece, she said. I just wanted to say I saw you in it. I see you. And I wish someone had seen me like that when I was your age. I nearly cried. She added, you should know, your father is not handling it well. Of course he wasn't. My father prided himself on emotional restraint, on stoicism, on being a real man who didn't cry at funerals or say, I love you, unless it was buried under sarcasm. I was his daughter, yes. But I had always been the soft one. The inconvenient one. The one who took everything personally. I hadn't spoken to him since the essay came out. Until his name flashed on my phone one Thursday night. I let it ring 3 times. Then answered. His voice was clipped. Claire, do you have a minute? I do, I said. Calm. Neutral. I read your story, he said. Or whatever you want to call it. Essay, I corrected. He didn't acknowledge the correction. He cleared his throat. You made some strong accusations. About the family. About how you were raised. I told the truth. You told your version of the truth. My version is the one I lived. That makes it real. He sighed heavily. Your mother's upset. Aaron's upset. Do you know how it feels for people to whisper about your family at church? I sat up straighter. And do you know how it felt to be the emotional punching bag for 3 decades? Silence. Then he said, you always had a flair for exaggeration. And there it was. The line. The one I'd been hearing since I was 8 years old. The one that turned all my pain into performance. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, I'm hanging up now. If you ever want to have a real conversation, not about appearances, not about discomfort, but about me, then call again. Otherwise, we're done here. And I ended the call. My hands were shaking, but I didn't regret it. The next few days felt electric. Like I'd finally burned the last bridge holding me hostage. But fire draws attention. And attention brings pushback. 2 days later, Erin showed up at my apartment uninvited. I opened the door to find her standing there in oversized sunglasses and an expensive coat, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I need to talk to you, she said. I stepped aside. Then talk. She walked in like she owned the place. Sat on my couch like it was hers. I stood. She looked up at me, calm but cold. You've made a mess. I tilted my head. Of our family. I laughed once, sharp. Our family made that mess. I just stopped pretending it didn't exist. She didn't flinch. Do you enjoy being a victim, Claire? Do you get something out of this? I felt something inside me simmer. Then I asked, do you enjoy being the villain? She scowled. Don't twist this. I'm not. You're just mad I stopped playing my role. She stood, walked toward the window. You've made everyone uncomfortable. Mom's crying all the time. Dad's furious. And now you're some kind of internet hero for being brave enough to tell everyone how mean we were. I stepped closer. You know what bravery actually looks like? Saying I hurt someone. I didn't mean to, but I did. And I'm willing to sit in that discomfort because I love them more than I love being right. Her face twitched. Just for a second. Then she said, you always think you're the moral one. No, I said. I just stopped gaslighting myself. She walked toward the door. Paused. I hope this attention is worth the price. I met her eyes. It already is. She left. And for the first time in my life, I didn't chase her. That week, I did something else. I signed up to read a portion of my essay at a local storytelling night. They had a theme that month, misunderstood. I smiled when I saw it. Perfect. The bar was cozy. Dim lights. About 40 people in the crowd. Strangers, mostly. When I got up there, mic in hand, I started to shake. But then I looked out and saw a woman in the second row, nodding. Another woman holding her friend's hand. A guy wiping his eyes. And I spoke. Not just with my voice. With every part of me that had been silenced for years. When I stepped off the stage, people hugged me. One woman whispered, you told my story better than I ever could. I went home that night and cried in the shower. Not from sadness. From release. It was like the parts of me I buried were finally standing up. No more hiding. No more apologizing. No more letting Too Sensitive be the story they wrote about me. Now, I was writing my own. I didn't expect it to go public. At least, not the way it did. Yes, I wrote the essay. Yes, I said my name could be on it. But it was just one personal story among dozens in that publication. I figured it would reach a few thoughtful readers and maybe some kind strangers online. I didn't expect it to land in the inbox of a producer at a national podcast I actually listened to. The email subject line read, your story moved me. Would you consider sharing it on air? I stared at it for a full 10 minutes before opening it. They were kind. Thoughtful. They said my words felt like a mirror for so many people. They wanted to do an episode on the myth of emotional weakness, and they wanted me to be the centerpiece. Me, the girl who used to sit in her bedroom and try to cry silently into her pillow so her parents wouldn't hear. I waited 3 days before replying. Not because I wasn't sure. Because I was terrified. What if I messed up? What if I cried? What if they heard my voice and decided I wasn't worth hearing? But I replied. I said yes. We recorded the episode on a Tuesday morning in a warm, windowlit studio downtown. The host, Kim, was kind. She asked questions gently, gave me time, didn't rush me when my voice cracked. She let me speak about how being too sensitive had followed me like a curse word. About the fear of being called emotional in professional spaces. About how even now, in my 30s, I still flinched when someone said, don't take it personally. But the moment that changed everything for me, and for what would come next, was when she asked, what would you say to the version of yourself who believed all of it? I looked at the mic, then out the window, then said, I'd tell her she was never the problem. I'd tell her that being sensitive didn't make her weak, it meant she loved deeply. Saw clearly. That the people who mocked her feelings were just terrified of facing their own. And I'd tell her that the world needs softness. That we don't need more strong silent types. We need strong open types. I'd tell her I'm proud of her for surviving in a place that didn't know how to love her properly. There was a long pause. Kim wiped her eyes. And then she said, thank you. The episode dropped 2 weeks later. And everything changed. I wasn't prepared for the messages. Hundreds. Emails. DMs. Comments. Even handwritten letters sent to the publications office. From women. Men. Teenagers. Retirees. Therapists. Teachers. They said, you told my story. They said, I've spent 30 years thinking I was broken. They said, I just forwarded this to my mother. She doesn't get it, but now maybe she will. Some of the notes were angry. One man said, "You're what's wrong with this generation. Everyone's feelings on display." But those didn't stick. Because the ones that mattered, the ones that healed me, came from people who'd lived through the same quiet erasure I had. One message came from someone named Harper. She wrote, "I'm 58. My dad called me dramatic my whole life. I believed it until last year. I'm just now learning how to cry without apologizing. Your voice made me feel less alone." I read that one twice. Then I cried. For her. For me. For all of us. But the twist? The real twist? It came from someone I never expected. Erin. Not through a phone call. Not even a text. But through a comment under the podcast post, public for anyone to see. She used her real name. And she wrote, "I'm Claire's sister. I've made a lot of jokes over the years I thought were harmless. They weren't. I thought I was teasing, I was actually gaslighting. I've been the strong one, the funny one, the one who didn't get emotional. But what I didn't realize is that my strength came from being allowed to feel safe, while Claire had to armor up to survive. I've been listening. And I'm sorry. You deserved better. And I want to do better." I stared at the comment for a long time. Then read it again. And again. Part of me didn't trust it. It felt too easy. Too neat. But another part, the part that had longed for acknowledgement, not perfection, softened. It didn't fix everything. But it was a beginning. We met at a quiet park. Neutral ground. No house, no walls, no echo of old wounds. She brought 2 coffees. I brought a granola bar, just in case we couldn't talk and needed something to break the silence. We sat on a bench under a tree that was just beginning to change colors. She spoke first. I wrote the comment because I didn't know how else to say it. "I saw it," I said. I didn't know how to respond either. She nodded. Then said, "You made me look at myself in a way I never wanted to." I didn't say anything. "I thought if I didn't mean to hurt you, it didn't count," she went on. "But I was cruel. I didn't know how cruel until I saw your face when you told the truth and didn't flinch. That stopped me." She added, "I've spent so long being the funny one, the tough one, that I didn't know how to sit still when someone else showed pain. So I joked. I minimized. I called you sensitive because I couldn't handle my own discomfort. Still, I said nothing." She looked down. "I don't expect you to forgive me." I shook my head. "I don't want to hold it over you. But I also can't pretend it didn't change me." "I know." We sat in silence. Then I said, "I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to stop pretending it didn't happen." She looked at me. "I can do that." And for the first time in our lives, I believed her. My parents were slower. They didn't comment. Didn't email. But a month after the podcast aired, I got a small envelope in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Inside was a letter from my mom. 1 page. Not perfect. But real. "Claire, I've been listening to you with different ears lately. I don't understand everything, but I believe you. I'm sorry I made you feel like your feelings were something to be ashamed of. I was taught that too, but that doesn't make it okay. I hope we can learn together. Love." Mom. I folded it slowly, held it to my chest. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the smallest pulse of hope. Not because they'd changed, but because I had. Because I'd stopped waiting for their permission to feel what I felt. Because I finally realized being too sensitive was never a flaw. It was a mirror, a compass, a strength. And I wasn't hiding it anymore. The thing they never tell you about healing is that it doesn't always come with peace. Sometimes it comes with grief. Not just the kind that aches in your chest, but the kind that walks behind you quietly while you try to move forward. The kind that whispers, "You're doing the right thing," even as it shows you all the people you're leaving behind. That's what the fallout felt like. Subtle at first. Like a room you used to know well being rearranged in your absence. I wasn't disowned. No one slammed a door. No one cursed me out. But things changed. Family dinners got awkward. Shorter. Fewer. Erin showed up late to one and left early without hugging anyone. My dad stopped talking to me directly. Instead, he'd ask questions to the room that I knew were meant for me. "Some people just love attention," he said one night while watching the news. "Gotta make everything about them." I said nothing. My mom flinched. And in that moment, I realized something painful. I wasn't just grieving who they were to me, I was grieving who I had been for them. The buffer, the peacemaker, the emotional sponge. Now that I wasn't playing that role anymore, they didn't know what to do with me. And for the first time in my life, I let that be their problem. I stopped chasing closure, stopped performing for applause, stopped measuring my worth by how easy to be around I was. It wasn't easy. There were days I wanted to take it all back, to delete the essay, to call my dad and say, forget it, I overreacted, to go back to being agreeable and quiet and not such a burden. But I didn't. Instead, I learned how to sit with the discomfort of being misunderstood, of being talked about, of not being the one everyone loved unconditionally. And through it all, I stayed soft. Not the performative kind of soft, the real kind. The kind that allows you to cry without apology, to say that hurt without demanding the other person fix it, to feel everything, even when it's inconvenient. I stopped needing to explain my sensitivity. I just let it be. And as I did, something beautiful happened. New people entered my life, people who didn't flinch at emotion, people who cried with me during movies, who sent long, thoughtful texts instead of emojis, who asked questions like, "What's been on your heart lately?" instead of "What's new?" People who didn't make me feel like I was too much. One of them was Maya. She messaged me after the podcast aired, said my story ripped something open. We started chatting slowly, awkwardly at first, then with more ease. She had grown up in a house like mine. Stoic father, dismissive mother. Cried in secret was a habit we both knew intimately. Our first phone call lasted 3 hours. Our first meetup was at a bookstore cafe. By the third time we saw each other, she reached across the table and said, "You feel like a person I've always been looking for." I did cry then, right there in the cafe. And instead of telling me not to cry, she handed me a napkin and said, "Don't stop. I love this part of you." That's when I knew this was what I'd always deserved. Not just romantic affection. Affirmation. A space where sensitivity wasn't tolerated, it was treasured. Meanwhile, the distance between me and my family became more defined. Not cruel, not dramatic, just real. We saw each other less. When we did, the conversations were surface level. Aaron and I texted occasionally, but it was different. Measured. Cautious. I wasn't angry. I wasn't holding a grudge. But I was done pretending we were close just because we shared DNA. And that, too, was grief. Because even after all the hurt, there was still a part of me that wanted her to wake up one day and say, "You were right." I see it all now. Let's try again. She never did. Instead, I got what I now call the Christmas text. December 24th, 7:42 p.m. Merry Christmas, Claire. Hope you're doing well. We miss you. I stared at it for a long time. No love you. No invite. Just a line. Just enough to feel like something. I typed and deleted 5 replies. Then I settled on, "Merry Christmas. I hope you're doing well too." That was it. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about not saying more. On New Year's Eve, I went to Maya's place. She made mulled wine, and we built a fort out of sheets and fairy lights like we were 12. At midnight, she kissed me soft and slow and said, "To the year of feeling everything." I raised my glass. To the year of not apologizing for it. We clinked. We drank. And I felt whole. Not fixed. Not perfect. But whole. A few months later, I spoke on a panel at a local women's conference. The topic was emotional labor, how women are conditioned to carry everyone's feelings, but their own. There were 4 of us on stage. I wore a navy jumpsuit, my palms sweaty as I adjusted my mic. Then I looked out into the crowd and saw her, my mom, in the second row. She looked smaller than I remembered, more unsure. I didn't change what I said. I told the truth about years of minimizing, of being the sensitive one, of being taught that silence was safety. I didn't look at her once, but when the panel ended and people came up to thank us, she stayed in her seat, waited until the room was almost empty, then approached me. Her hands shook slightly. "I didn't come to argue," she said quietly. I just wanted to see you, to hear you, not filtered through a story someone else told about you. I nodded. She hesitated, then added, "You were always the brave one. We just didn't know it." That sentence, that tiny, imperfect offering, undid something in me. Not in a collapse, but in a soft thaw. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But something passed between us. And for now, that was enough. I went home that night and wrote in my journal, "I no longer need everyone to understand me. I just need to stay close to the parts of myself I was told to hide." That's where I live now. Not in some perfect healing arc. Not in revenge. But in reclamation. Reclaiming softness. Reclaiming honesty. Reclaiming the right to say, "That hurt me," without being labeled too much. Some people still don't get it. Some never will. But I do. And for the first time in my life, that's all that matters. I used to think closure came from someone else. A conversation. An apology. A scene where the music swells and all the pain is acknowledged in full, everyone cries, and things are whole again. But that's not real life. Closure isn't about someone else handing you peace. It's about deciding that you don't need their permission to have it. That's where I am now. I wish I could say things with my family transformed completely. That we all went to therapy together. That Erin called and cried and said she never meant to hurt me. That my dad pulled me aside and finally said, "I'm proud of who you are, not despite your feelings, but because of them." None of that happened. But something else did. Life moved on. Not in a way that erased the past, but in a way that allowed it to take its place where it belongs. Behind me. Not forgotten. Not forgiven without thought. But no longer in the driver's seat. I live differently now. More slowly. More intentionally. I don't say yes out of guilt anymore. I don't laugh to soften someone else's cruelty. And most importantly, I don't apologize for my sensitivity. Ever. I wear it like a badge now. I've even started teaching workshops. Small ones, local for now. Emotional integrity and boundaries, I call them. Mostly women. A few men. All of them coming in with the same look I once wore, weary, unsure if they're allowed to feel as much as they do. The first time I stood in front of that little circle of folding chairs, I almost backed out. But then I remembered the girl I used to be, who thought the only way to survive was to be quiet and agreeable. And I opened with this. If you've ever been told you're too sensitive, you're not alone. You're not too much. You've just been carrying what others refuse to feel. They listened. They nodded. They shared. And after every session, someone came up to me and whispered, "Thank you." I didn't know how badly I needed this. That's the work now. Helping others feel what I spent years trying not to. And with that work came something unexpected. Community. Real community. The kind that doesn't demand you shave off parts of yourself to belong. Women who talk in group chats about crying during commercials, about boundaries with parents, about learning to rest without guilt. Friends who don't say, "Don't be so sensitive," when I tell them something hurt me. They say, "I'm so sorry. Tell me more." That kind of kindness changes you, heals you, makes you feel less like you're surviving and more like you're living. Maya and I are still together. Stronger, even. Not because it's easy, but because we both decided to be honest always. No softening the truth. No minimizing. We leave space for each other's emotional landscapes. Sometimes we still get it wrong, but we always come back. She told me once, "I fell in love with the way you feel everything." Don't ever lose that. I wrote it down. I keep it in my wallet. Because when someone loves the part of you the world told you to hide, that's sacred. Last month, Erin and I met up. It had been over a year. We weren't close again. I don't think we ever will be in the way we once were. But we were, softer. She asked to meet. Said she'd been in therapy. That she didn't come looking for a relationship, just to return some of the honesty I'd given her. We sat in the same cafe where I used to cry quietly into chai lattes. She told me she'd spent most of her life afraid of vulnerability. That mocking mine had been easier than confronting her own. I thought being numb meant I was strong, she said. But lately, I think maybe I just wasn't brave enough to feel. I looked at her for a long time. Not with anger. Not even hurt. Just curiosity. I said, "I hope you give yourself the chance to find out what you've been avoiding." She nodded. We didn't hug, but we didn't need to. Closure, I've learned, isn't about reunions. It's about peace. And I had mine. The last thing I want to tell you is this. If they've called you too sensitive, you're not broken. If they've laughed when you cried, you're not weak. If you've ever had to leave a room just to hold yourself together, you're not being dramatic. You are exactly the kind of person this world needs more of. Feelers. Healers. Truth tellers. People who say, "That hurt me," without flinching. People who feel their way through life with honesty and grace and messiness and courage. They might not see your power. They might mock it, minimize it. But let me tell you something I had to learn the hard way. The ability to feel deeply is not a liability. It is a superpower. One that will make the right people draw closer. And the wrong ones fall away. Let them. You don't need to bury your feelings to be loved. You don't need to apologize for how much things matter to you. You don't need to be anything other than who you already are in all your softness, your clarity, your trembling truth. Because you are not too sensitive. You are simply awake. And that is the bravest thing anyone can be.